UN chief virus could push the virus could push millions of Africans into poverty. And this is by Edith M. Ledler out of Associated Press. And so this is a really growing concern that many Africans could be pushed into more impoverished situations than they already are. So, virus outbreak in South Africa. A woman that is wearing a face mask to protect against the coronavirus has a temperature check by security personnel before entering a grocery shop. And this is in Tembisa Township in Johannesburg, South Africa. So United Nations, which is called the UN, Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned Wednesday that the coronavirus pandemic threatens many millions of African progress and could push millions into extreme poverty. The UN chief said in a video launching a policy report on the impact of COVID-19 in Africa. So the countries on the continent have responded swiftly to the crisis. As of now, reported cases are lower than feared, with more than 2,500 deaths has occurred. So the virus is present in all African countries, with most recording fewer than 1,000 cases. A 28-page document in the UN report said. And so the relatively low numbers of COVID-19 cases confirmed thus far have raised hopes of African countries may be spared. I'm so busy thinking about how it spreads, but it says it may be spared the worst of the pandemic. But however, the report has said, cautioned and warranted, however, that these are the early days of this in the life cycle of the disease that is still not fully understood, and where we have seen repeated patterns of first slow, then exponential growth of the numbers of cases. And usually, when you see these numbers of cases, they start out slow, and then all of a sudden they just kind of double and triple in numbers, and they quadruple later down the road. And the UN said that the low numbers could be linked to a minimal testing reporting, pointing to the World Health Organization warning the pandemic could kill between 83,000 to 190,000 people in 47 African countries in the first year, mostly depending on government's response. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, also warned that the socio-economic impacts could smolder several years, the report said. So Gutierrez said that much hangs in the balance right now. So he called the international action to strengthen Africa's health system, maintain food supplies, avoid financial crises, support education, protect jobs, keep households, businesses afloat, and cushion the continent against lost income and export earnings. Now, mind you, these are countries that are already, very fragile and impoverished and living almost sometimes, on limited resources. And so that's what makes this more of a serious situation, and not to mention some of the other countries that are outside of Africa, like the U.S., that has been experiencing a lot of problems as well. Could also push many people that are minorities and low-wage earners into poverty, which it already has done in most cases. And so that I'm adding in there. So to help address the devastating economic and social consequence of this pandemic of COVID-19, Gutierrez said Africa needs more than $200 billion and across the board debt standstill for African countries unable to service the debt. That's followed by the targeted debt relief and the comprehensive approach to structural issues in the international debt architecture to prevent defaults. And so in recent years, Gutierrez said economic growth in Africa has been strong. The digital revolution has taken hold, and agreement has been reached on the free trade area. But he has said already demand for Africa's commodities, tourism, and remittances are declining, and an opening of the trade zone has been pushed back. The Secretary General said the pandemic will aggravate long-standing inequalities and heighten hunger, malnutrition, and vulnerabilities to disease. So the UN urged the agriculture to be declared a critical sector that should not be interrupted by COVID-19 related measures. Gutierrez commended what countries and African Union have done to tackle the pandemic already, so saying most have deepened regional coordination, deployed health workers, and enforced quarantine lockdowns and border closures already. So they are also drawing on experiences of HIV and AIDS and Ebola to debunk rumors and overcome mistrust of the government, security forces, and healthcare workers, Gutierrez said. So he said that the United Nations have delivered millions of test kits, respirators, other supplies reaching almost the entire continent. So while dealing with the pandemic, the United Nations, or UN, reported said maintaining peace and security in Africa remains paramount. So Guterres has appealed for global ceasefires to tackle COVID-19, and he said it is essential for African countries to sustain their efforts to silence the guns and address violent extremism, which is going on, has been going on. And so here it is right here. It's sad because some of the countries that and the people that are most vulnerable to this pandemic are suffering even more so.